Ladies and gentlemen, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. After ships and planes and world sugar, I feel that what I'm going to talk about is really rather diminutive. I should explain a little bit of the background to who I am. I have been in what is laughingly described as the media industry most of my working life. And the project that I'm going to describe to you was basically part of some background research that we were doing for a science fiction television series which we hope to shoot in China next year. Sierra Leone, the project, is a simple idea. It was an idea for small groups, such as small villages, schools, to create and store energy and then perhaps use it as required. All that was needed, and therefore it is somewhat restricted in terms of what our ideas were, was an abundance of sunshine. So this wouldn't work in the Arctic or the Antarctic, where if you look up my wife, Pom Oliver, she has walked to the North Pole twice and the South Pole once, which probably says something about me, but we're still married. So this works where there is an abundance of sunshine and where there is usable soil. It all started with a friend of mine, not a great friend because I actually don't play any sport, but there's a well-known Premiership Division footballer called Craig Bellamy, who had an idea to develop a football academy in Africa. And I went out with him on his first trip to record what was happening, and he had decided to go to Sierra Leone. As Craig would say, he left school in uncertain circumstances when he was quite young, but his best friend had gone to a place in Africa called Sierra Leone, and he thought that he would follow him over there, and where Craig went, I went, and a whole bunch of his managers and everybody else. So we went to Sierra Leone, and Craig wanted to set up a football academy. It's a simple idea. Sierra Leone, like many African countries, most of the young boys there are mad about football, and a lot of the European League players come from Africa. So the idea was, could we provide some accommodation and education, working with other charities like Street Kids and so forth. We were there to take 20 or 30 boys, educate them, and there was basically a way in, which was that we had matches and so forth to see how they could play football, and the boys came, and we've now got about 30 young boys at an academy at a place called Tombo, which is a small fishing village about 30 minutes on a rough road outside of Freetown. So we asked all these young boys to come, and we interviewed them, and it became obvious to me that one of the problems in Sierra Leone after this incredible war was the infrastructure was completely ruined. And part of the difficulty was giving the kids something to do when darkness fell, because the Sierra Leone national grid and their own ability to generate electricity was really hit and miss. People have asked me what Sierra Leone was like, and I only have one story, which was the first Sunday we were there. We went to, and it's a beautiful country, absolutely beautiful, and the beaches are white and sandy for as far as the eye can see. And on Sunday, every Sierra Leone boy, they go onto the beach and play football, and of course there is Craig Bellamy, Premiership Division footballer, in his shorts, playing without shoes on rather knife-like sand, and I'm filming him, and he comes up to me and he said, "We're going to play the amputees." I went, "What do you mean we are going to play the amputees? I have no idea how you play football." So he said, "No, don't ridiculous." So I found myself without shoes, jumping up and down, pretending I knew what I was doing, when what looked like an image from the First World War emerged. There were these kids, they've had their arms cut off, polio was rife, so they had swinging legs, they were in crutches, and we're going to play them. So I remember saying what turned out to be one of the more ridiculous things I've ever said in my life. I turned to Craig and I went, "We should let them win." And he gave me a look which I realised what it meant when the whistle blew, and these kids shot past us and scored a goal. I mean, a kid with a polioed leg, with crutches, if he knows what he's doing, moves at the speed of an antelope. We lost 20-0, and I realised that there were probably quite a few good players there. So, with the help of the Sierra Leone government, the village of Tombo, we were given land, and we built the academy. We've got 30 boys there. And I became interested to see if we might give the academy some self-sufficiency in the generation of electricity. So I came back to the United Kingdom and went to my old university, Southampton, where I was in the 60s reading law, surrounded by engineers. It was everywhere you turned, there were engineers, and I thought, my goodness me, I should go back there and see if they know what, if they could help us. So I went back to the University of Southampton with a couple of ideas in my mind. One was, from my brief experience in Sierra Leone, the sun beateth down extraordinarily, and on inquiry it seemed to shine most of the time, apart from the odd tropical rainstorm. So part of my story, as you'll hear in a moment, is that I work in China a lot, and I work in a city called Wuxi and another one called Nantong, which is the home to the Suntech Corporation, which is, probably has a gross value of its income bigger than this country, and it makes most of the solar panels. So I knew that I could get some solar panels relatively inexpensively out of China, and we could put them there. As somebody who's always interested in the film business, you're interested in everything, a jack of all trades and master of none. And I was always interested in the fact that at the turn of the last century, a lot of buses in London worked on compressed air. So I went to the university and said, could we put up solar panels? Could we power some cylinders, compress air into these cylinders using a compressor, reverse that and use it as an air engine? And could we achieve somewhere between 4 and 5 kilowatts on an average day of stored electricity? So we set to it and we developed two systems. One was a straightforward compressed system which would work for the academy and would probably give them 3 or 4 kilowatts, maybe 3 only, using straightforward compression. But as we all know, as we try and blow a balloon up, the bigger and the pressure is in the balloon, the more as an asthmatic I'm incapable of blowing it up. So we went to water or oil hydraulics and used that to pressurize the cylinders. So what we've defined is a system for the academy or anywhere in Africa where we could basically put up some solar arrays. The University of Southampton has all the disciplines that are capable that you need to make all the calculations. We have looked at both air compressor and hydraulic compression, put the cylinders, they're very plentiful cylinders, and once they're tested we would normally bury them just for safety's sake, and local car mechanic or a local blacksmith or whatever, by and large, can keep this system going. We'd obviously looked at batteries, and it was a problem. The batteries that are in Sierra Leone are lying rotting on dumps, they're leaking into the soil. Lithium-ion and complicated batteries were just not available, the cost was too high. So even though our air system was not particularly efficient, we would probably only get about 10% out of it, it could work day in, day out, generating modest amounts of electricity so that the kids could be there, they could use their computers, we could use LED lighting, and they would have 2 or 3 hours in the hours of darkness to carry on their studies or to become part of the social revolution and join in with the rest of the world because they had this rare commodity called electricity. So we have now effectively designed it at the University of Southampton. So I went back to the city of Nantong, and if people who know China, Nantong is one of the big construction cities. It built Shanghai. It's an engineering city. It's on the banks of the Yangtze, so it has a huge shipbuilding, and there is a wonderful company there that we work with, which is an American-Chinese company, and I went to see the boss and I said, look, could you cost out and manufacture these so that we've got a design, we know we could manufacture it, and then we could go to NGOs, governments, charities, and give them a price and say, here is a standalone system which could be used for our little school, lots of other little schools, surgeries, where a ready supply of electricity is a requirement for everyday life. It's very small, it's small amounts of power, but that amount of power is the difference between life and death. And then I looked at the difference between life and death. And one of the things that we'd done in China, we, some years ago, had planted jatropha, we'd looked at palm oil, and again, working with our Chinese, we had a simple system where around Sierra Leone and parts of Africa, we could grow the jatropha or palm oil. We could put in a simple, another compressing system so that the village itself could be self-sufficient in diesel. We felt that we could probably sell both systems for less than $10,000. Now, $10,000 is an enormous amount of money in Africa. But on the basis that they could make their own diesel, they could make their own electricity, and when I say life and death, it's great having electricity, but if a woman's about to have a birth and the hospital is 20 miles away and there's a complication, you probably still, for the foreseeable future, need liquid fuel to put in a taxi, a car, or even an ambulance, and diesel is the preferred fuel there, and it's easy to make. And you could get that person quickly to a hospital, assuming you had the vehicle there. So we developed these two ideas, which is where we are today. And the last part of it was, of course, we needed to promote it. So one of the things, and Christopher, I think, will recognize the power of television, the power of films. So we decided to develop a science fiction series where, basically for reasons which are to do, as Robin and I were discussing, the nonsense of science fiction, a city gets cut off, it has no way of getting in and out of it, so they have to develop their own systems. So we would then show our compressed air system, and they would be growing oil and trying to keep their civilization going until they can figure out what on earth has happened to the particular city that they're living in. So what we were wanting to do on my side, because I hand over to my colleagues to look after the business side, is to see if we could promote that through the use of television. Lastly, we've looked at doing this in Africa with our academy. We have a small experimental place on an island called Roatan off the coast of Honduras, where there are more abandoned palm oil plantations than you can shake a stick at. There's a lot of unemployment, and we thought, well, we could get the young boys to pick up palm oil nuts and we could be self-sufficient, because at the moment electricity prices on this island are just going up and up and up because it's diesel-generated electricity. So if the island could just make their own diesel, they would at least try and stabilize the cost of their own energy. So we've done that. And lastly, in my own county of West Sussex, we have just started to see if we could put in a compressed air system there, but we need a lot more work in terms of sunshine and solar panels and how much we can generate and what we could store and planning permission and all the other nonsense that goes with it. So I wanted to be quite quick about this because I thought that we might just have some interesting discussions about what we could do in terms of our ingenuity, providing things on a very small scale. You know, could we go with the help that we could bring to, whether it's a village in Honduras, whether it's a village in Africa, and allow them the chance to consider with experts, and they have their own experts in terms of growing the crops, could we find a way of generating electricity and storing it for them for a long-term future? These panels last for 20 or 30 years now. Also in Honduras, there's a lagoon around it, and I went to see Mr. Caldani in Rome a few weeks ago, and he has a wonderful system of cooling the solar panels just under the water, and they have probably about a 60% better efficiency because they're kept cool rather than just sticking out in the sun. So we're constantly looking at how we could store electricity, and lastly, how on a small scale, not on a large scale. When I was there, the EU came in and bought up enormous amounts of land where we have our training area and are growing sugar cane for ethanol to meet the 85-15 or whatever it is regulations. What we wanted to do was to use a simpler system, and as you know, the Jatropha and palm oil is a cold system, and using sodium hydroxide you can make diesel quite simply. It won't power some of the posh Mercedes outside, but it'll power an ordinary simple diesel engine, which is what they have in Africa, apart from the rulers. So that's where we've got to. That's the Sierra Leone project. Thank you for listening, and I thought we might maybe start a little question about it.